Hey there everyone, welcome back to the channel. When playing D&D, there is one thing that many players will have to face sooner or later. Player character death. Most times, it's in an epic way, like sacrificing themselves to save the rest of their friends in the face of a bad situation, or falling in the heat of battle while striking the final blow to the BBEG. A good DM can make these events impactful and full of emotion, though, in the hands of other DMs, they can be uninspired, or just downright unfair. Much like the examples in these next D&D horror stories. But first, Nipsey would like to have a word. How could you resist that face? Also, sharing the video helps more than you think too. But with all that YouTube stuff out of the way, let's get right into these tales. DM totally botches my character's backstory, then ends the campaign before it even begins. Submitted to the D&D Doge subreddit by Reddit user Thundar1000. This is a fairly short story. This happened back in 1990 or 1991, and the names have been changed for privacy reasons. I'm going to be using the characters from the Canadian TV series, The Trailer Park Boys, if you're curious. Good old 2nd edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, nostalgic sigh. Ah, Thaco. My group's main DM, Randy, was starting a new homebrew campaign setting of his own design. He asked us to make new first level characters specifically for the setting. The members of the group were myself, Ricky, Julian, and Bubbles, along with Randy DMing, as mentioned. I don't remember what any of the others made as characters, and they didn't really do anything to add to this particular horror story, but I figured I should at least give them a mention. Randy's world map was a cluster of islands in the middle of a vast ocean, so we were likely going to be mostly going on sea adventures. I decided to make a simple human male fighter. I put all of his best stats into his physical attributes, while using his mental attributes as his dump stat. If I remember correctly, he had an extraordinary strength score. In 2nd edition, if any of the warrior classes, so fighter, ranger, or paladin, scored an 18 strength, they would then roll a percentile dice to determine extraordinary strength, with results ranging from 1 to 100. I think his strength was 1885, or something like that. It's been so long that I don't quite remember. I do remember that his intelligence score was really low, like 7 or 8. I decided to loosely base him on Lenny from Of Mice and Men. Very loosely, because unlike Lenny, he didn't accidentally pet animals to death. Which I appreciate. I gave my fighter a simple, fairly cliché, and yes, very edgy backstory. He grew up on a farm, and his father was a retired adventurer. One day, he skipped out on his chores to go fishing in the creek. When he came back, he found his home burning and his whole family dead. Among the wreckage, he found his father's old adventuring gear and an emblem taken from one of the attackers. So my character went out to seek his revenge. I had, deliberately, left the identity of the attackers a mystery so that Randy could milk my backstory for multiple adventures. I could find a clue as to their whereabouts one session, only to find out that it was a false lead at the end of the adventure. Or I could follow another lead, only to arrive at the destination too late, but find a clue indicating where to go next. I could come across small groups of the attackers along the way, working my way up to the big boss. But did Randy do any of that? Well, would I be here typing the story out if he had? Nope. You want to know what he did? He made the very first thing I find, in the very first city I go to, be the pirate ship with the big boss on board. So I did what my character, a big dumb fighter hungry for revenge, would do. I attacked. The fight lasted maybe 3 rounds, I think. My character, being only first level, died pretty quickly. I looked at Randy and asked, what the heck was the point of that? No matter what the outcome was, that would have been the end of my character. If he loses, he's dead. Game over. If he wins, his whole motivation for becoming an adventurer is gone and he retires. Again, game over. If this was supposed to be a long-running campaign, why cut it short like that? You didn't have to attack them, Randy replied. Yes, I shot back. Yes, I did have to attack them. My character is a moron. I deliberately made him that way. You can't expect a moron to do the smart thing. Randy basically just shrugged it off. We never played in that homebrew setting again after that. I don't know. Maybe Randy decided that creating a whole new setting from the whole cloth was just too much work and decided to deliberately tank the campaign before it ever started. Because whenever we played Advanced Dungeons & Dragons in the Forgotten Realms, our preferred campaign setting, he totally rocked as a DM. He would come up with exciting and interesting adventures and was really good at improvising when us players did the unexpected. But this time, he took the basis of what could have been plot hooks for a couple dozen adventures and just flushed them down the toilet. And I still don't know why. And to all of you who would like to read this story on YouTube, you have my permission to do so. So, Mr. Ripper, D&D Doge. Hey, that me. Crispy's Tavern, Crit Crab, Den of the Drake, and whoever else. Please feel free to use the story in your videos. And I did. Well, it definitely did sound like a short campaign. Though, I don't really think that the DM is too much at fault here. Perhaps he legit didn't think that OP's character would run in there without a care in the world. I mean, even the dumbest person probably has the instinct of self-preservation. And even if your character is the dumbest person alive, you still have the player agency to not make him run into a gang of pirates that will push the character's off button. Honestly, I think the majority of the blame for what happened falls on OP's lap. Though, those are just my thoughts on the matter. What do y'all think? Let's move on to the next one. Dungeon Master deals unreal damage only to the players absent from the table. By Reddit user Bala Morala. So, for some context, I had been playing in a 3.5 campaign with the same DM for about 3 years, and about 3 months ago, the bomb dropped, and I finally left the table. Granted, I had already gone through about 5 characters in this campaign, and there were plenty of times that I felt things were wholly unfair, but this one really took the cake. Not to mention, I was the longest lasting player at this table, and I have seen several people come and go, over and over, and I just kept trucking along because I cared about the DM and did not want to hurt his feelings. I am still friends with this man because I do still care for him as a friend, but I will never play at his table again. Another thing I must mention is that we often found magical items, or had to buy them for extreme amounts of gold, and often they were cursed or lost soon later. They were used to fight against the often deadly encounters disguised as easy. So here's the cast. The DM as DM, Jacqueline. Me and my albino minotaur factorum. Karash, the variant lizard folk cleric. Viv, the human war mage. And Akira, monkey person monk. We had recently left a dwarven city and were on our way to our next quest location. The session ended, and we had to take a bit of a break before we could play again. Meanwhile, my mother gets the Rona and passes it to me. As I lay bedridden and sick as all hell, I get a call on Facebook Messenger from DM. DM, hey Jacqueline, we were wondering if you wanted to play over the phone. Me, nah guys, I'm sorry. I'm pretty much dying right now, and I don't have the energy to play. I hope that y'all have fun though. DM, you sure? Me, yeah, no, sorry. I can't even lift my head really right now. DM, alright, well, feel better soon. Now, at this point, I am assuming that the rest of the party was there and that they would be fine. However, as it turns out, Viv was also absent because she was busy, and she was assured that there would be no gameplay that night. So, unknown to either of us, the DM held a vote with the other remaining players, and they voted to play. I didn't hear from them until about 3 hours later, when Akira says, quote, I am so sorry guys. After the sarcastic, haha, what happened? To my horror, I was told that both my character and Viv's had died due to a ridiculous amount of damage, with no saves and no chance of survival. As it turns out, during a standard night, as the party camped out at an abandoned tower, the DM rolled on a random encounter that caused some specters to appear and attack the party using strength damage. Note, my character and Viv's were both sound asleep and not woken up once during this entire encounter. As a last-ditch effort, Akira threw some 60 enchanted ball bearings, which turned into incorporeal fully sized cannonballs. Though these were incorporeal, they apparently did damage to corporeal objects. They flew into the building's walls and dealt 1,428 bludgeoning damage to the building, causing it to collapse. There were no death saving throws or checks to avoid the damage, and Jacqueline and Viv were crushed instantly. I couldn't believe it. While I am sick as fuck and the other party member is under the impression that we aren't even playing, the DM allows our characters to die instantly and without any chance to save ourselves. He then tells us that we are welcome to roll and see if we get an afterlife quest, which we only get if we roll a natural 20. Viv chews him out and leaves the group chat immediately. I tell the others that I need some time to chill out and rest. I message them in the morning, saying that I am also leaving the table, as this was the last straw of unfair garbage. I take the time to assure them that I still want to be friends, but I cannot play this campaign anymore, and explained what exactly I had a problem with. After my long message, DM messaged me back, saying that it was a random encounter, and that it was out of his control, that it was an easy encounter anyways. I told him that his response hurt me and made me feel like he wasn't even listening, and I left the group chat. No D&D is far better than bad D&D, and it took me 3 years to realize that. As I said, I am still friends with him, and he recently told me that his little sister is wanting to start playing D&D and asked him to DM. He said that he would have to make some changes, and I said, quote, "Oh, so you're going to make it easier for her because it's her first campaign?" And he says, "No, just less grimdark. Godspeed, little adventurer. I just hope that this doesn't turn her away from D&D. I have other stories from this campaign that I can talk about, but this was the most recent. I hope it was entertaining and informative, and for any new players, a lesson. If your DM seems to take pleasure in killing your characters, that is a red flag, and it may be time to find a new table." Wow, talk about a total dick move on the DM's part. Killing a player's character while they aren't even there, and when OP had COVID no less. Not to mention that the DM said to the other player that there was no gameplay that night, but then to do so anyways after a vote. If anything, DM could have still played, but just do an RP session with no possibility of combat, and just catch the other players up on what happened next time. I do not blame OP for noping out of that game, as that was completely unacceptable on the DM's part. Let's get on to the next one. Fellow player attempts assassination, just not against the enemy. By Reddit user Tenfold Gambit. So, this happened a few years ago, but I'll do my best to give an accurate account. Me and some friends had just started up Curse of Strahd after having spent the previous year planning a homebrewish campaign in a homebrew setting based on our city. We all had fun playing together, and no one was ever really a problem, aside from the usual zoning out when it's not their turn and whatnot. We did a session 0, so DM could learn our backstories, and then we met up again the next week to start the campaign. Everyone was really excited about a new campaign with all the new characters. There were 3 people in our party, but the important players are myself, a blood hunter named Maria, and our rogue. We'll call him Stone. The other party member is blameless here, and the only important thing is that he was a paladin. Stone had never been the disruptive type, maybe a bit quiet sometimes, and occasionally checked out when not in combat, but other than that, a totally fine player. And then, Session 1 happened. Somehow, the party found themselves in an old abandoned house, and after clearing out most of it, the DM informed us that the paladin sensed something evil under the floor. Naturally, we found a place where the floor was broken and made our way into the crawlspace under the house. We looked around for a bit, and then we found some sort of undead creature sitting motionless in the far corner. This is where the problems start. Everyone wanted to leave it alone, but Stone decided that he was going to go and poke the thing with his dagger. Needless to say, that did not go well, and his level 2 rogue got knocked off his feet and pinned by the monster. Since I was the only other person down there at the time, I rushed over to shove the thing off of him and try to fend it off. Between me and Stone, we managed to kill the thing, but not before I took a few good hits. I had exactly 2 HP left. We made our way over to the hole in the floor, where our other party member was waiting with a rope so we could climb out. Just before I made it to the rope, Stone tried to convince our very lawful good paladin to pull the rope up and not let me out because I was suspicious. Okay. I don't think I've done anything suspicious up to this point, but hey, maybe he's finally getting into role-playing some more with his character. The paladin, of course, did not listen to this and left the rope down for me to climb out. Stone did not climb out. He stood at the bottom of the rope for a bit, looking up at us. He then says to the DM, quote, "I take my dagger out and throw it at Maria." The DM is confused, and I'm a tad peeved, because he knows I'm at low HP. Stone reiterates that he wants to throw his dagger at me, and the DM reluctantly agrees, saying that I'll have half cover because I'm sitting on the floor above where he's standing. At this point, I realize he's serious about this and ask him not to do it. Quote, "Dude, please don't. You cannot roll low enough to not kill me if you hit. I have 2 hit points left." He fucking giggles at this gleefully. Stone rolls, 18 plus modifier, hits. Damage rolled, 4. And then, just like that, my character is laying on the floor and bleeding out. The paladin pulls the rope up before Stone can get out, stranding him in the crawl space, but it was fairly obvious he was conflicted about the situation. Our paladin was a bit of a socially awkward guy, and him and Stone were pretty good friends. On the other hand, murder isn't cool, and what Stone did was pretty uncalled for. Stone spends the next few death saves convincing the paladin to not heal me because I was, you guessed it, suspicious. Nothing to back that, by the way. I just was. Maria tragically bleeds to death on the floor. I'm pretty upset about all this, as I really liked the character and was super excited about playing her. We played at mine and the DM's place, so I ended the session there and sent everyone home. I never talked to Stone again, and haven't played D&D with that DM either for unrelated reasons. I still play with the paladin occasionally, and have a way better and consistent group now. All's well that ends well, but I'll never understand why. I will never understand players like this. D&D is supposed to be a cooperative game, and while yes, what you can do in the game is quite open world, for the lack of a better term, having a character do something like this to another player is super messed up, and does nothing but ruin the game for everyone else. I don't blame OP for stopping the game after that, and never playing with that player again. Because when the first thing they do is something like this, you just know more problems will arise in the future. Thankfully, it sounds like OP and Paladin are better off, and in better games. And by the looks of it, we have time for a bonus story. And it's actually an update of a series of stories I have read before. Specifically this video here. So if you want to get a rundown of the Sam character, be sure to go check that video out. But with that said, let's hop right in. A Sam update by Reddit user KRokon. I have an update on Sam, and it's a doozy. If you want a brief summary on the previous posts, Sam did the following. 1. Sam got angry with me when I refused to hand my character sheet over after I dropped out of his game due to being attached to my character. 2. Sam was toxic towards a new DM who was inexperienced. And 3. He made threats about jumping a customer that got him kicked out of the hobby store that I played at. After winter was mostly over, I ran into Sam at my childhood park. We didn't speak with each other, but I saw him in the bathroom building off in the distance. He was also accompanied by 3 people that I didn't know. I was surprised that he was even there, but I ignored him and he mostly ignored me. However, one time, I saw Sam pointing me out to his friends. I could imagine him saying the following: "There's the asshole who didn't give me the character sheet that I owned." Again, I planned to ignore Sam, but I felt a little paranoid by seeing him do that. This is the same person who threatened to attack someone over a fictional magic item. It could have been an empty threat, but you may never know. Whenever I walked around the park from this point on, I would see Sam and his friends by the bathroom all the time. I always used the opposite restroom because of that. Thankfully, Sam didn't do anything creepy, as far as I know. The worst thing is that he gets into an argument with one of his friends, but that's about it. One day, I sit down at the picnic table and have lunch from the nearby Wendy's when I'm approached by one of Sam's friends. He told me that he dropped out of Sam's D&D campaign because it was weird and didn't feel like it was actually Dungeons & Dragons. He also told me that while I wasn't the main target, Sam always stated that I was associated with the hobby store and its owner. He had a serious grudge against the owner and was telling everyone that he was being discriminated against because he wasn't good at D&D. And it gets even better. Sam claims that he was banned because he sucked at board games and how the owner was toxic because Sam was not playing it the right way. Getting really annoyed by this, I tell him what really happened, and he isn't surprised. I am, however, surprised when he informs me that Sam was hosting a D&D campaign where everyone, including me, was the bad guy. It turns out that this random person knew my name because Sam had given it to him. The main premise was that he used real names, including mine, and had the store owner as the main antagonist. Sam roleplayed the store owner as an elitist noble who sent out guards to hunt for and brutally murder people who were disabled. Yes, you read that correctly. He was using real-life disabilities as a plot point and having the store owner attacking those who were on the spectrum. God damn it. I was portrayed as a guard who was working for the noble. I would break into houses and steal trading cards from children. Yes, trading cards. In the end of the campaign, everyone kills the elitist noble, and Sam describes his death in horrific detail, such as blood and skin peeling away. The more I listened to this, the more I couldn't believe it. In this situation, I don't have proof, but it's also Sam, and I wouldn't be surprised if he really pulled something like this. I have to ask, what should I do in this situation? Should I leave Sam be, or should I tell the store owner that Sam is spreading these false stories? Well, Sam still seems to be up to his immature ways. As far as OP asking for advice, I would just ignore him. There is no point in being confrontational with someone like this. If he wants to spin tales of someone that happens to have your name, stealing trading cards and such in D&D, it's whatever. Though, if it gets to the point of a Chris Chan type of situation, where he begins harassing you and the store owner, then I would consider further options. Hopefully, it doesn't come to that, and it's just a strange guy living in his own world. But keep a lookout for him wearing a Sonic costume and running in the park. If you see that, then you better run, cause he gotta go fast. And that will do it for today's video. Have you ever had a character die in one of your tabletop RPGs? If so, how did it go? Was it in an epic blaze of glory, or was it less than notable? And if you have a story that you would like to be shared on the channel, be sure to post it in the comments, on the subreddit, or even just contact me on Twitter. As always, I appreciate all of you, and I hope your characters live long and happy lives. Until next time.